this relationship is important because the world, they said, is reverting to the law of the jungle. So that was quite the turn of phrase.
Saying we're right, I think there's no truly correct answer here. So we're going to go with Turando. And if you don't like that, you can lump it. Or you can shout at us. You can WhatsApp us on 0333 003 2353. You can text us on 87222, starting with the word times. Or email our producer, Emma, who spent about 10 minutes trying to explore the pronunciation of Turandot.
And I'm almost certainly still going to get it wrong.
Yeah, I think the thing I'm taking from this is there is no right answer, so therefore there is no wrong answer. Anyway, you can contact Emma if you like, studio@times.radio.
It is 7 minutes past 6. The Prime Minister's trip to China has begun. He's been meeting President Xi and will visit the Forbidden City later on. Anna Mikhailova, our political editor, joins us now from Beijing. Good morning.
Good morning.
How has that meeting gone so far? Are they still in talks or has that wrapped up now?
The meeting's finished. So they had a part of the meeting at the beginning where they were on camera and both said very nice things about each other, and both hinted that they wanted to increase ties and grow the relationship. In fact, Xi Jinping said that it was imperative to build closer ties between the two countries for world peace. And so they had the bilateral, then they've had lunch. That is finishing off. And Keir Starmer is getting a private tour of the Forbidden City, where I am now. You can see it behind me. And after that, he'll be briefing us journalists about how the meeting went.
And we will speak to you after that briefing, Anna, so we'll get more information about how that went when the cameras were turned off in just a couple of hours' time. What's the mood of the trip so far? I mean, it's translating over here as, you know, the Prime Minister, there are big questions for him about how robust he'll be, for example, on Jimmy Lai. We know there's going to be this announcement on people smuggling and small boat engines, but what's the mood over there?
The mood is pretty optimistic. I mean, the mood on the diplomatic side here is that it's been too long for Britain to engage with China, so they think it's something that needs to happen and hasn't been happening enough. There was a feeling that when James Cleverly came for the Conservatives, that would lead to more engagement and more ministers coming, but that didn't happen under the last government. So I think there's a feeling that it's right for Keir Starmer to be here. I would just point out that, you know, we focus a lot, and our questions to Keir Starmer so far has been a lot about whether he'll raise human rights, Jimmy Lai, Ukraine. But I think when you look at the meeting they've just had, the actual big moment with President Xi, you know, they were both sitting on a long table each opposite each other, surrounded with their delegation next to each other. And the person that Keir Starmer had next to him was Peter Kyle, the business secretary. And just next to him was Varun Chandra, his business advisor. So there's a clear signal that business, economic ties, trade are a big focus here. You may have also seen in the picture there was a huge amount of flowers in between the two tables, and I'm told that that's because Xi Jinping personally very much likes flowers and always has a lot of flowers everywhere. And we were asking Number 10 whether they brought some flowers for him, but in fact I believe I can reveal this now, that Keir Starmer brought him a football. He brought him the football that Arsenal played with in the game on the weekend. Remember on the day that he decided Andy Burnham's fate, it was that match.
Didn't they lose? They lost that match, I think.
Yes.
It was one of the first ones they've lost for quite a while.
I'm sure the Prime Minister will shortly explain the symbolism in much greater detail as we're about to see him. He gave us a bit of a preview last night at dinner when he popped into the journalist dinner. But yes, so I'm sure we'll hear much more on that. But, you know, I think in the bigger picture here is, I think for China, I mean, looking at the way the Chinese press is reporting this visit, they are saying it's great Keir Starmer's here, but they're also lumping him in with quite a few other leaders. They're saying lots of Western leaders are coming here. Ireland has had a visit recently for the first time in 15 years. I mean, the reporting locally isn't building Keir Starmer himself up into a big moment. They're saying it's a trend that China is being recognised more by a host of countries. So I think that's just worth bearing in mind when we think about what each side is getting from this visit. I think for the UK, it's the potential benefits greatly outweigh the benefits for China on their side.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Anna, and it'll be really interesting to hear how the Prime Minister translates that meeting he's just had with Xi Jinping.
The Prime Minister's trip to China is well underway. He's preparing to meet the Premier of the People's Republic, Li Qiang. Times Radio's very own Anna Mikhailova is on the road with the PM and joins us now. Anna, morning to you, or afternoon in Beijing.
Morning, afternoon.
Whatever. I'm sure you don't even know what time it is. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We've heard from the Prime Minister. I want to talk about his tone in a moment, but you've actually been huddling with him. What has he been saying to you?
So the PM said that he gave a brief readout of his meeting with President Xi shortly after the bilat finished. He was focusing on how warm he found the meeting, and he said that progress had been made in a number of areas, including visa-free travel, something on whiskies, and their cooperation on these small boats that we've heard a bit about so far. I mean, broadly, the PM was kind of keen to stress that the meeting went well and that he felt that he'd achieved something tangible, although we are yet to see what that could actually mean in terms of any economic gains for the UK. He has still got further talks to go with Premier Li, but in terms of Starmer and Xi, their interactions are finished. Separately from what we heard from the Prime Minister personally, we've also just been, getting a bit more detail outside of the meeting from sources. And so the meeting went on in total for over 3 hours, which overran by about 45 minutes. It included a private tete-a-tete between Keir Starmer and President Xi. They were accompanied by, Starmer was accompanied by Jonathan Powell in that, but otherwise he described it as a tete-a-tete. The broad topics discussed were, as I say, those areas of cooperation. The PM also raised a couple of issues that he wanted to challenge the Chinese on, and that included the case of Jimmy Lai. It included sanctioned MPs, and it included some human rights areas, including the Uyghurs, I understand. On sanctioned MPs, we haven't yet understood if that has led to some sort of agreement with the Chinese, but the PM seems to have come away thinking that some progress has been made on that front, although that might mean just further discussions.
That's interesting, Anna, because the tone I took from the way he spoke, and we had William Hague on Tuesday saying these are things are all very carefully choreographed, and you raise them to say you've raised them, and you might raise them because you genuinely believe Jimmy Lai should be out of prison and MPs shouldn't be sanctioned. But if this was going to lead to a massive change, it would have been prepared in advance. It would have been briefed in advance. It sounds to me that this is all about getting close to China, not causing ructions with China.
So, Stig, I think part of the message they're trying to land here is that this is the start of engagement. So there's been a lot of briefing about how UK relations have been in an ice age, an ice box, and all that kind of language has been used, and that this is a thawing of that. One government spokesman has actually said that this is not one and done. So this visit, the suggestion is there'll be more engagement, and I think that is what they want to land. But, the question is, after we get to the end of the visit, because there are still more engagements to come. Keir Starmer's meeting the Chinese Premier shortly for another bilateral. But, if sometimes, the critics would say that he hasn't come away with that much, and that's why the language focuses on the future more. Yeah. But you do also see from the Chinese, the Chinese side put out quite a curious statement that this relationship is important because the world, they said, is reverting to the law of the jungle. So that was quite the turn of phrase, and obviously a reference to America and what's going on with the world order. A couple of points of colour, I suppose, if you want them. The PM talked about football. We already talked about his gift of the Arsenal Man United football, and I have got to the bottom of why he'd give a losing football. Well, President Xi has expressed interest in Man U. I don't think you'd call him a fan, but I think that's the team
Okay.
he's interested in.
Yes.
And then in that meeting, so Starmer presents him with the football saying, oh, I know you like Man U, here it is. And it was signed by all the players. And then Xi, it turns out, revealed that he not only had an interest in Man U and New Arsenal, he had also been to Man City and referenced Crystal Palace. Now, I was going to save that as a Drive exclusive, but I don't think... I don't think
John Pina.
Wait, I know.
Well, he can get excited about it, having heard it now, and then you can talk a bit more about it when you speak to him later on.
And then, but Stig, for you also, they talked about Shakespeare, and President Xi revealed that as a young boy, when he would go to great lengths to get copies of books, and that his favourite books to read were the complete works of Shakespeare.
Oh.
Anna, what did she get for Starmer? Do you know?
We don't know yet. We're waiting for that. You'll be the first to hear.
We will. Anna, you're doing a great job. She's there in Beijing with the Prime Minister, and she's going to be back on Times Radio all throughout the day, giving us these little nuggets as well as the big policy stuff.
I'm in an exclusive bit of the Forbidden Palace, by the way, that people are normally not allowed into.
Oh.
And I bet...
Number 10 is looking at me edgily, saying, I'm not sure I'm supposed to say that.
Yeah.
But
And I bet no one's ever broadcast live from there. So there we go, Anna.
I don't think they have. I had to argue for it.
Well done.
There we go.
Quite right too. Don't do any damage there. Come home safely. Anna Mikhailova there in Beijing with the Prime Minister. You'll hear her throughout the day on Times Radio.
Yeah, fingers crossed she makes it back all right.